So up next, we have my dear friend and teacher, Dave the Mystic. Many of you probably already know Dave the Mystic, but he's very, very gifted, has an amazing radio show. I know, we love him. I'm going to let him talk about himself too. So Dave the Mystic, I'm turning it over to you. Welcome.
Hi, thanks for inviting me. This is fun. I'll try to talk for about 45 or 50 minutes and then leave time for questions at the end. And yeah, feel free to ask what's on your mind when we get there. Here's just a little bit of humor to get us started. This is maybe how ETs, some ETs approach us. If you can read that.
Can you read it to us? Because it's kind of blurry.
Well, I think it's perfectly all right to dispense with the usual safety protocol. Have you ever seen such an adorable, welcoming delegation? The ETs are carrots.
It's funny.
Um, let's talk some more about my background. I've had a lifelong career as an electrical engineer in aerospace. Um, and I kind of led a dual life there. A lot of my psychic friends joke about me being Clark Kent and Superman because back in 1983, some interesting things happened to me, and it really kicked me off. I went to my 10th high school reunion and just expected the average thing. I ran into an old friend there, Barry, and Barry said, "Dave, did you become an electrical engineer like you expected?" And I said, "Yeah." He said, "Do you think it's possible to change things at a distance?" And I said, "Well, what do you mean?" And he just kind of kept being obtuse. And he finally said, "Come over to my house after the picnic. I want to show you some things." So we went to his house. I rode with him, and we got there and stepped out of the car. He walked me over to the electric meter on his house, and he had me get close to it. He said, "Do you see the rate of the wheel?" I could see the wheel spinning. The wheel spins, the speed is proportional to the amount of power you're using at that moment. I said, "Sure, I see that." He points to it with his index finger and says, "Now," and the wheel slows by a third. And then he tells me, "I did this to my mother's house 3 months ago, and her bills are still lower." Wow, okay. We walk inside, and he has a little black and white TV on rabbit ears. He turns it on and puts on a station where there's no transmitted station, it's just snow. He points at the TV and says, "Now," and he tunes in a channel on the TV. He showed me something with his stereo. He's a disc jockey at an FM radio station. He had a very nice stereo, and it had those level meters for the left and right side. And he said, "Do you see how the needles are moving with the music?" I said, "Sure." Music gets louder and needle goes up. He points at the stereo and says, "Now," the needles go out of phase with the music. When the music gets louder, the needles go down. Well, this is starting to sort of raise the hairs on the back of my neck just a little bit. We go back out to his car, and he said, "I want to show you something." We get in the car, he starts it and leaves it idling with his hands and feet off of the controls. And he points at the hood or the engine and says, "Now," and he could slow down the idle to the point where the car was stalling. And then he told me, "I've been able to stall other cars in traffic." Uh, wow, that's one of those things that we all dream of being able to do when we're out there driving. And then we went down to his FM radio station. We went in the back part of the building where the room was that had all the meters that indicate the transmitter health. And there was one meter that was digital and it was reading 99.6. He said, "This is a 50,000 watt FM station." He said that meter indicates that 99.6% of 50,000 watts is going out the antenna right now. And it was very stable. It was rock solid. He said, "I can lower the output power. I can't lower it very much or I'll trip the station off the air. I've done that before." Okay. So he said, "Are you ready?" He said, "It's stable." I said, "Sure." And he points at the meter and goes, "Now," and it drops to 99.2. So 0.4% of 50,000 watts. He just controlled that with his mind and dropped that. In later visits, I found that he could change traffic light sequences. He could change marquee signs on hotels that were computer generated. But with that trip, that forced me when I returned back to Denver. I grew up in Wichita, and that's where this was. But I came back to Denver where we were living, and I just have to admit that electrical engineering was kind of running out of steam on being able to explain to me the nature of the universe, and I just seen some major contradictions. I was open to psychic phenomena. My mom had gotten interested in astrology when I was in junior high, and I was kind of her guinea pig to try a lot of things. But I hadn't really followed that after high school. But this was a clear calling to me. And so I started taking psychic development classes at metaphysical bookstores. I started taking healing energy or energy healing classes through Therapeutic Touch here in Denver. And I also joined a group called the Tibetan Foundation. They were channeling ascended masters and teaching people how to channel. And that really kicked off. But of course, I had to keep a dual life because I was working for Martin Marietta, which eventually merged with Lockheed. And it wouldn't have been cool in the 80s to sort of come out of the closet about being an energy healer in an aerospace company. So I kept that under wraps. And I pretty much kept that under wraps until 2019, when I finally quit working in aerospace altogether. Um, but things moved on, and I left Lockheed in 2020. I'm sorry, 2000, and went to a small renewable energy company. Then the big hands came down and really started pushing me to really up my game on healing. And in 2003, I won some contracts independently with the Air Force for consulting. And the voice just said, well, now you have all the time you need, all the money you need, go learn everything you can about healing. And so I learned about 8 or 9 different healing modalities. I took acupuncture classes for a couple trimesters and then decided that wasn't for me. And I had 2 years of mentoring from a Denver medium. And a lot of gifts started coming through, gifts of reading past lives, uh, doing more sophisticated energy work. One of my healing modalities was Psi K, which works with subconscious core beliefs, and that really became a major factor in my healing work. And other things started showing up. In 2008, I was approached by somebody. It was a phone call when I was on vacation Las Vegas, and a woman said, "I'm a friend of a friend of your daughter's, and there's some entity in my house. I need your help if you can." And that was my first clearing. I did it remotely, and I've done all my clearings remotely ever since. I've probably done over 3,000 clearings now since then, and I have a pretty sophisticated system for that. But other things started coming through. I was shown in a meditation by some spiritual beings that uh, how to do karma burning. So one of my offerings is doing karma burning for all of your lifetimes and disconnecting those. So a lot of insights have come through. I feel like I've been very blessed with all of the gifts. I have a lot of claircognizance now. When I'm asked questions, the answers just start flowing, or the information, especially on past lives. One of the interesting things that happened in this time period, because starting in that time period about 2005, 2006, I started doing lots of journeying to the spiritual plane and other places to meet guides and others. Um, so they built a healing pyramid for me in the spiritual plane, and this pyramid was huge. It could hold thousands and thousands of tables and people. And at the front of the area, there was like a horseshoe shape of 7 or 8 massage tables where clients I was going to work on remotely, I'd place them there to work, and guides would show up, Archangel Raphael, doctors in spirit, others to help. But one time I was starting to work on these people, and I look up and there's ETs standing around. Um, I didn't realize how much my childhood learning of traditional Christianity and the Episcopal Church affected me. My dad was an engineer and then an Episcopal priest. My parents split when I was around 11, but I continued into church through high school. Um, but there's something, and probably if any of you tested it, you might find that you also have a gut reaction that says, uh, by the way, that heaven that we go to is for people. It's for people who were created by the Creator. Um, it really forced me to just spend a lot of time looking at my views and exploring why would there be ETs in our heaven? And a couple answers really come through. One is that we're very closely related to the ETs. Probably a lot of our DNA is actually an amalgam of a variety of different ET races. Another thing is that a number of ETs are very spiritually or vibrationally advanced, and our heaven is just another vibrational layer that seems to be configured for us to have a place to land and grow. But certain ETs who don't need to manifest a body, or they can manifest one when they want and then just release it when they're done, without a life, or a birth and death cycle, uh, they can drop in on what we think of as our heavenly or spiritual plane that we go to when our bodies die. So that really started propelling me forward with my interest in ETs and why they're here. I mean, growing up as a kid, I remember, I'm old enough to remember Project Blue Book being mentioned on the news. And basically, it was an Air Force effort to kind of discredit any sightings. Always, well, it's swamp gas, it's weather balloons, blah, blah, blah. And there is no such thing as Roswell, all those types of things. But I truly believe the ETs are here. I've had experiences with them, which I'll talk about, and I feel very privileged to work with a number of ETs. I do work with a variety of them at this point, energetically. Did they drop into my house physically and shake hands? No. But if I close my eyes and I need their help, they show up. So, so what's happening? Why are ETs interested in Earth? Why are they coming here? Well, we're going through a major transition at this point. From my point of view, and your results may vary, but this is my view, is um, our Earth is getting ready to go through a major spiritual transformation. It might be 2 days, 2 weeks, 2 years, 20 years, 200 years. I don't know. But in the cosmic scale of things, it's getting very, very close. And I believe that many of the ETs are here because they want to watch. Some of them actively want to help, make sure that we don't do anything stupid like blow ourselves up with nuclear weapons. But a lot of them just want to watch and see what the experience is, because it doesn't happen very often in many planets' evolutions. And so they want to be here, they want to see it. Probably a lot of them were here when the Earth was first formed, and they did terraforming on the Earth to find out what plants would work here with our particular chemical mix. And some of them may have been involved with hybridizing the early hominids in order to make them be able to advance and have rational thinking and to be very cognizant, which we've seen in the last million years. So there's a lot of reasons why they're here to sort of just see what's going to happen. I think we've been getting prepped through things like movies for a long time. E.T., Close Encounters of the Third Kind, all the Star Wars movies, Star Trek, all these things. I think the big message there is to desensitize people to sentient beings that look different and act differently, um, and to get out of the mindset that if they look like people, they're safe, and if they don't look like people, they're dangerous, and we need to get rid of them. I think we've been getting healthy doses of how to avoid that mindset. So we get away from a gut reaction that is, as soon as a spacecraft lands, we have to go get the deer rifle and be prepared. Um, that's just that's not true. And frankly, our human weapons are probably very ineffective, given that they can just do mind control if they need to sort of stop us in our tracks from doing something really stupid. The other thing is, for the last 70 or 80 years, we've had lots of sightings. Sightings actually go back to prehistoric times. A lot of the cave art and pictographs and things from early indigenous peoples clearly shows things that look like people sitting in spacecrafts. and visiting. The other thing that we had that was scary for a lot of people, starting, with regression hypnosis in the 60s and 70s, was abductions and being poked and prodded, having eggs stolen or whatever in order to create hybrids. Um, when I've really investigated that with my contacts, what really comes through is an image that, um, and this also I think is borne out by the people who have gone through a hypnotic regression, that ETs, in a lot of cases, are so spiritually evolved that they have a hard time lowering their expectation to where we identify ourselves as what we see in the mirror. So the majority of people on this planet, if you said, "Who are you?" they would look in a mirror and say, "Well, that's me." They would not revert back to an idea that that is a container that holds the true essence of me, my soul, all my connections to my higher self, and this is a temporary condition. Um, well, a lot of ETs do have the viewpoint that their body is just a temporary container, and therefore they are as vested in that on like a medical test as you driving a car to the mechanic shop and having the mechanic check the oil. You would say the car is not me, even though I showed up in the car controlling the car. That's how a lot of ETs view what the body is. So I don't think they got it for a number of years that people identify on Earth so closely with their bodies that it was a terrible insult to their psyche that somebody would poke, prod, examine them, harvest cells, any of that type of stuff. I just don't think it came through to them. I think it does now. And for the most part, with a few exceptions that you hear at some of the UFO conferences, for the most part, it seems like we've gotten away from the idea that they are here to create hybrids through harvesting things from us. There are other ways to do it. And so they have a variety of reasons to be here, but I still think the main one is that they want to be here when we make this sudden vibrational leap where maybe a lot of people are going to leave this vibrational level of Earth and go up to higher vibrational levels of Earth where the living is easier. This particular Earth is, from my experiences on exploring the universe, this is one of the roughest, toughest places in the universe. Um, People take on these incarnations because you also have the opportunity through these challenges to make the fastest spiritual progress. I've seen channelings from people of ETs where they've said on their planet, compared to ours, they said you can make more spiritual progress on Earth in 10 minutes than you can on our planet in 1,000 years because everything is so settled there. People really aren't in a position to be non-conforming, and so they don't get into trouble. They don't have challenges. They don't. They nip things in the bud, so to speak. So people can't get there. Many of our inventions and our leaps forward have come through trying something and making a mistake. Some cases, just having a fortuitous accident. Well, if you take those away on these other planets where the ETs are, you take away a lot of opportunities for rapid growth, or big evolutionary steps as somebody discovers something. So the types of ETs, if I loosely categorize them, we have the very helpful ETs. You'll hear names like Commander K or Commander Ashtar, the Galactic Federation, where they try to enforce some of these rules against other darker ETs where you can't go screw around on Earth, you can't mess up things there, you can't make deals with the bad humans, that type of thing. We aren't going to allow nuclear weapons be used in a conflict, that type of thing. I think we have a very big group of passive ETs that just want to be here to see what's happening to us. This is kind of like, the movie premiere, and they're all sitting in their spacecraft with buckets of popcorn, waiting to see what's going to happen next. And then we do have the smaller group of dark ETs who want to mess things up. They want to interfere. They want to control people. They interact with dark groups that are behind the scenes on different governments. And uh, a number of those in my clearing work because I also look for dark ETs as one of the things that's bothering people. In my clearing work, I've moved a lot of these dark ETs away with the help of the good ETs. When I check and muscle test, and I muscle test extensively for things, I find that there's probably over 340 different races of ETs, either around the planet or on the planet. And the on the planet sounds a little ominous. I'm going to talk about where I've seen these things, in some cases, talk to them when they didn't know if I knew, that type of thing. So one of the first ones I want to talk about is the concept. I love this phrase, hiding in plain sight. Um, I actually had a chance to test this one time. So cold December morning, my wife and I are out for a walk, like typical here in Denver, crystal blue skies, silent Sunday morning, and we're walking down the street, and an airliner goes over, and I look at it, and I say, "Oh goodness, what the heck?" Well, I asked my wife, I said, "Do you see that?" She goes, "Yeah, it's an airliner. No big deal to her." This is how people are accustomed to seeing things. She didn't notice that it was low, it was slow, it was making no noise, and it had no wings. She just glanced up and said, "Oh, outline of an airliner. We have an airliner going over." And so that was very revealing to me. And since then, I've had a couple of events out at Denver International Airport where I've been leaving, and as we're on the road, the highway that's going adjacent to the property, I look and I see airliners hovering, and in some cases with no wings. Now, everybody else is going to look and just glance and say, "Oh, yeah, planes are on approach, they're landing, no big deal." Well, this happened a couple weeks ago. Once again, we got back from a flight in late afternoon, and we're driving by it, and I thought, I've just got to make sure this isn't an optical illusion. And so as I'm driving, I'm looking at these planes, and I see three, and two are hovering, and one is descending vertically, like an airliner is just coming down. And I check it against background references, trees, whatever structures they have around the airport, light poles, things like that. And no, it's not an optical illusion. These are happening like this, and I think in some cases I'm convinced that they're putting on a show for me. I've had a lot of demonstrations of mystical things, metaphysical things like this, where I get one-offs. And here's one of those things, hiding in plain sight. A variation of that is um, you can do this, and it works really great in Denver. You'll have this beautiful blue sky with one little puffy cloud. Um, if people start taking long distance telephoto images of that cloud over time, say 15 to 20 minutes, periodic pictures, if they go review those photos on the computer and blow them way up, they end up seeing like corners of spacecraft, a little bit of a detail of a spacecraft. These little puffy clouds are a great way for them to hide themselves if they're going to stay sort of in our 3D reality. So something you can try sometime if you see a cloud that looks out of the ordinary and it's all by itself. Uh, Take a bunch of pictures of it, with the most magnification you can get on your phone, and then throw them on the computer and really zoom in. And you may be amazed at some of the metallic glimpses you get in there, because clearly it's not an airplane hiding in a cloud. They wouldn't do that, and they have to be in motion to fly. Um, Another one, after my wife got used to me seeing spacecraft and stuff, one night we're driving, and we live on a little bit of a hill, and we're driving up the hill, and I see this red light beaming at me, and it's not moving, it's stationary. It's not an airplane, it's not a helicopter. And I said, "Do you see that?" And she goes, Yes, I see that. Keep your eyes on the road. I know it's a spacecraft. So she was just trying to kind of get used to the idea that this stuff was going to happen around us. Um, I want to talk about sort of the older concept of hybrids. So when we talk about hybrids in the context of um, 1990s, the 2000s, even somewhat a little bit after that, these are biological hybrids, half human, half ET, by a conventional genetic process. Um, Typically, the few times I've seen them, they are women in the 20s to 30s, drop dead gorgeous, but wearing like business outfits that are overkill. They're overdressed for the venue because I've seen them in like uh, different types of conferences or meetings, and something just catches my eye about them. And I don't know if it's because my spider sense is tingling, as Spidey would say, but I start looking at them and I realize that their eyes are wrong. Um, Rather than being almond shaped like our eyes normally are, it seems like their eyes are a little bit farther apart, and the outside corners of the eyes are more squared off. It looks more wedgy rather than almond. And as soon as you start noticing them, they can pick up mentally that you're noticing them, and you see the sunglasses come out, and then they grab their purse or handbag and quickly leave the venue and disappear. So it's kind of like, well, they don't want to risk a confrontation or being outed in that. So uh, that happens. I want to go back because I drew a sketch. Another thing that some of you may see at night, if you look for them, um, there are some ET spacecraft that are 2 to 3 miles long. They usually hover, and sometimes if they know you're looking and that you aren't a threat, they will let you see the three corner lights of it. So you'll see three red lights in a big triangle, uh, but they have ways to cloak themselves so you can see right through it, and you believe you're seeing the star field through the spacecraft. But if you ever see that pattern of three lights, you're probably seeing some variant of one of these triangular shaped spacecraft, and some of them are very, very big, and they act sort of as a home base for little dinky spacecraft, what I would call scout spacecraft, to park and then come back and make jaunts around our skies. So just something to look for. One of the coolest examples I've had of meeting some ETs inadvertently, while we both pretended, that we didn't notice. Uh, so one evening after dinner, my wife and I leave the house to drive west from our house on it's a 4-lane road and occasional turn lanes, and we drive about a mile and a half, and we hit a red light where we have to turn left to go into the parking lot for a McDonald's to get some iced teas. Pardon me. As we're seeing at the left turn signal, which is red, there's a truck on the other side, and all of a sudden they get rear-ended by a sedan, and not a major wreck, a good fender bender. Well, there's a fire station about half a mile down the road. We figured they'll be coming very quickly. Well, we go on up to McDonald's, go through the drive-through, get the iced teas, then we park, and we're on a little raised area where we're probably about 10 feet over the level of the road. And I'm watching, and nobody's getting out of the sedan. And I started to get concerned. I thought, well, maybe somebody needs first aid, or I need to just go check it out, see if they need help. I get down there, and there's a woman sitting at the steering wheel, and she looks like she's in her late 60s, mid 70s, wearing a business suit, like sort of like what I remember women wearing in the 1960s or 70s. That type, the coat and the skirt and a blouse, and I'd take a quick glance around the car, and there were three other women, fairly similarly aged and dressed. And I said, "Well, what happened?" And she says, "Well, I was driving down the road, and I was just kind of following the median. It had a raised median." And she said, "I realized too late that it swerved left for the left turn lane, and I couldn't correct myself quick enough to get around the truck, and so I hit the truck." Oh, okay. Well, my mind's already thinking, who drives down roads following medians versus following the lane markers, or just looking ahead? But that seemed odd. And then I said, you know, ma'am, I think maybe you ought to turn off the car." And she acted startled. And she said, "Oh, yes, yes." And she reaches down, turns the key off. And we talked a little bit more. And I said, "Does anybody need any help?" And nobody in the other three occupants in the car, nobody was saying a thing. They're all stock still. And all of a sudden it hit me as I'm standing there that, oh, I've got four ET women who just got some outfits at Central Casting and are out here for a joyride. And oops, they got busted, as we would say, the teenagers. Um, well, I didn't push the point with them, but it was obvious to me what was going on there. And so I went over to talk to the guy, and he was in his 30s, and bad day for him. He just found out that a cancer that was in remission had come back, and now to get his truck hit. And but I made sure he's okay and calmed him down because he was getting pretty upset. And then I just asked if anybody had called, and he said, "I think somebody called." So I went back to the car, and it still took about another 10 minutes before a cop car showed up and started taking care of things. But it is revealing to me because, again, it's this phrase, hiding in plain sight. There they are out there tooling around. So that was fun for me. It's fascinating. Again, I think it's one of those synchronicities that things get revealed to me and are offered to me. Pardon me for just a minute. I'm finishing up with a cold here. Well, let's talk about the next step, evolutionary wise, on what's going on with ETs. Is um, I started finding around 2008, 2009 that people were being energetically hybridized. And I saw it as the next step to get away from having to do biological hybrids. Maybe there's still some biological hybrids out there and it's still happening, but I find a lot of people are getting hybridized energetically. Their mix is changing. They're not just 100% human energetically anymore. And because of this, then I ended up creating a form or a worksheet. See if you get to see this, where what I do is I look at by muscle testing, what are the percentages for a person on human energy, ET energy, angelic, gods or goddess energy. That's another realm under the creator. Ascended masters, in some cases, dragon energy, jinn, which is where we get the term genie, Sasquatch, nature spirit. Um, and so what I do is I go through those. So I just did those numbers for my wife as I was preparing for this. So you can see it, my wife, 66% human, 1% ET, 16% angelic, um, 17% gods and goddesses, and then the rest are zeros. So we've gotten to 100%. These are dynamic; they change. A lot of people when they're born are going to be close to 100% human, and as time goes by, they may shift. Now, where can this create issues? A common thing for nice ETs and for nice angels is, hypothetically, they understand that Earth is a rough place to be, to live, to exist. Um, but they understand it's rough. Uh, when reality hits on this planet, it's a tougher thing, and I think some of them, that type of energy, or when they come here, or when some angels actually incarnate and walk around us, or ETs, I think they're in shock in a lot of cases that we can mistreat other people on the planet so badly. For example, we don't guarantee on this planet that you'll have food, water, shelter, or clothing. We just don't make that guarantee. You can look at a lot of groups on the planet who are incapable of getting that in sufficient quantities to thrive, much less survive. And I think that's a real existential insult to these people, or a shock to them. So what happens is occasionally on my clients, they'll come to me because they have maybe a teenage son or an adult son who's having a lot of adjustment difficulties. They may have some diagnoses of some type of mental health issue. And when I start checking them, sometimes I'll find that one of these folks might be 20% human energy and 70% ET. And I explain to the parent what's going on here from my point of view, that that amount of ET energy may be really affecting them at some level, because they don't feel comfortable seeing what's going on this planet in how we treat people. So that energy that you have from the ETs may also carry some uh, core beliefs, or consciousness ideas. And I found in my work that I'm able to work with spiritual beings to change that level of the mix. And so I work with spiritual beings to change that mix. And frequently, after we do that, and it may take 5 or 10 minutes of me being in the spiritual plane, then we'll go back and test and find out that now the youngster is maybe 80% human, and we've dropped off most of the other categories. And I get a lot of positive feedback in the coming weeks after these sessions, where they see a remarkable change in the young person on their behavior. So, is this just a really nice paradigm for something going on? It could be. I allow people to interpret their own results, but as a construct for me, I do see this as being valuable to help people, and from my point of view, it has a good explanatory capability for what's going on with them. So hybridizing humans that way, I think it's happening a lot. Uh, Talking some more about hiding in plain sight. Uh, Probably a lot of you have had this. A very common thing in our social psychology is that if we see somebody dressed outrageously, or behaving in social ways that typically aren't acceptable, we don't stare. We take that as being something, don't stare, Johnny, that's not polite. And so we don't. Okay, so what's a great way for ETs to walk amongst us? Um, you might have people who, or ETs who pop into a grocery store, and they wear some type of outrageous outfit. It may have mismatched fluorescent colors. It may look like they got the free stuff at the thrift store, something like that. And so you're going to approach them. You may even be fearful that they're in some way, mentally off, and so you kind of avoid them. Well, friends of mine who've seen this, and I've seen it a few times, you see these people in one aisle, and then if you go to say the cash register row, where you should have a view of anybody who comes out, you don't see them again. They disappear in the store. And this has happened enough times that I think this is a common thing. I think it happens out on the street too, where you may see somebody who, again, is very out of the ordinary on their dress, and you don't want to be in flight, and they turn a corner, and I think in many cases they disappear. They blink out of our reality and move on. When I muscle test to see how many ETs are among us, walking the streets, interacting with us, I get about 3.5% of all the people you see out there. So, for every 100 people you see out there, three or four of them may be not from here, so to speak. So I do think that they're here. You know, if they had evil intent, if they all had evil intent, then clearly we would have been taken over because they have advanced mind techniques, they have advanced weapons if they need to use them, all those types of things. So um, I think the majority are helpful or at least passive, where they just want to watch. But I look forward to the helpful ones. Some of the dark ones, like reptilians, um, if I work with people and find that they have a natural capability for maybe remote viewing, I caution them on not going to look at the moon because frequently on the moon there are a lot of reptilian bases, and I said you don't want to go peek and poke in one of those and have them detect you. Energetically, they can follow you back, and they could psychically whack you about the head and shoulders a little bit. So be be respectful for where you might go look for whatever your reasons are with remote viewing, so you don't trigger something like that. So overall, I think they're here. I think they're part of our genetic background in various ways. I think in some ways, as we went through really tough times as early humans, they were there to help coach us and that were sent down out of the spiritual plane to help guide us and have us survive. Uh, when I've talked in meditations to some of the big guns about where the Earth is and what's happening, they said, Dave, this is the third time this experiment has been tried. We wanted to succeed. They said the previous two times it destroyed itself. So I think again that's why we're getting some boots on the ground help on trying to help steer us. Um, I think some of the conflicts we're having through the 20th century, warfare, gross abuse of groups of people in terms of genocides and things, I think they're trying to help guide us to the point where we make a big moral evolutionary step where we get away from that stuff and we leave it behind us. But we got to go through some birthing pains to get there and to reach a point where you just say, never again. This is just unacceptable. Never again. So I think I'll end it there and start taking questions. The name I go by on fairs and things is Dave the Mystic. My website is davethemystic.com, so you can find out more about what I do, my healing practices, my other services. I have a lot of little video clips which can help explain what I do if you're interested. So I'll start looking for questions, and we'll see if Emily can moderate or if somebody else is going to moderate or just raise a hand.
Yeah, there's a question in the chat already from Rana Joe. Let's see. She says, how do you feel about the ancient astronauts and humans having some of their DNA as in the missing link?
I think that I sort of agree with some of the people who say, we have 23 strands of DNA, and that represents 23 different ET races, coming together in us. I don't like the idea of people saying, well, we have junk DNA that does nothing. I just can't believe with the complexity of forming a DNA strand that there is unused DNA in there. It may not be activated. It may end up being messages. It may end up being things that if we find a way to turn it on, we might be fantastically spiritually gifted. I don't know, but I clearly think that it came from us. You talk to NASA people, and they've grudgingly come around and they said, yeah, we don't agree with the idea that a lightning bolt over a primordial soup of chemicals on the earth created RNA or DNA that was replicating. That just mathematically, on the time it would take for those mutations to happen, it's just not there. They've gotten to the point where they say, we believe the earth was seeded by comets carrying organic material. Well, that begs the question, organic material from where? Is this one of those things like you see in some of the sci-fi shows they call panspermia, where maybe different races out there just sent out tons of snowballs to possibly seed the universe. There's going to be enough times that it hits on fertile soil that it's going to start a process of animals developing. But I think we're also the result of the spiritual plane coaxing and moving us forward, as well as the ETs.
Good, thank you. Let's see. I don't see any other questions. Okay, let's see. Okay, yeah, Lily has actually, Sashi has a question. Sorry about that. She says, do you know anything about the secret space program?
I've heard people talk about it. I've seen some shows about it. This is my point of view. After having worked in the space program, when I was in college, I wouldn't have ever imagined, 50 years later, because I'm just about to 50-year point from graduating from college, uh, that we would still be using chemical rockets to get to space. When I see what is hinted at on our reverse engineering of spacecraft from ETs, um, I believe that our space program at this point is a sham. Um, yeah, I believe it's a useful way to take money out of government coffers to fund the black programs. Um, I truly believe that we have spacecraft under government control, and it's not just our government, where we've been zipping and zooming around the solar system for decades. One of the fears on disclosure is that we'll get some clever guys who wear the black hats here, who will put on costumes that look like ETs. They'll fly some of these secret spacecraft around and land and fake an ET interaction and try to steer the progress in the conversation. So I think that might be a real fear. I'm not sure.
It wouldn't surprise me if they try to control the narrative. Anyway, yeah,
Yeah,
true.
yeah.
Let's see. There's a bunch of questions here. So, okay, so Lily is asking, she says, in Las Vegas, I saw large metallic objects tumbling near the airport, but could not photograph them. Could these be ETs? I've also had the visitors come to watch a group distance Reiki session, like visitors in a museum.
Yeah, it's these types of things that don't look like conventional aircraft. Um, Very likely that they're ETs. There's also the possibility that there is something that our government is doing with dark programs where you might see a result that makes it look like something like that, even though um, that's what you interpret it as. It's actually something quite different, but nobody's going to clear it up for you. So, um, yeah, that may be why you couldn't photograph them, is because here's the other thing too. A very interesting thing a couple of years ago is that I talked to a guy, and he sees spacecraft all the time. And he leased a piece of property near Mount Shasta, or one of those types of areas. And he could routinely see and photograph spacecraft flying into the mountain. Other people on adjacent properties could not see them, and there was nothing for them to film. So apparently, these spacecraft and the people on them have the capability of controlling who on the ground is capable of seeing the phenomena and who on the ground is capable of capturing it, maybe photographically. So they do have very sophisticated mind control techniques on uh, who can see it and who can't. And I think that's a very clear thing on that.
That's interesting too. I'm hearing like could be frequency related. If you're on that frequency, you can see them too.
Hmm.
Like could be energetic as well for the person viewing. Could be if they're on that frequency, you know.
Well, in my life, I've had a lot of demonstrations of different things by spiritual beings, and one of them is uh, I've been invisible in front of other people 3 times. I didn't know it. I didn't perceive it. I felt like I was standing there, but something consciousness wise, suddenly I snapped back into their reality, and suddenly they were startled because I just popped up in front of them, and so I think there is something vibrationally about what we see and how it's controlled and whether or not we can perceive it. And probably a lot of people who are in on this seminar, you might be more attuned to seeing some of these things, where you might be standing next to a neighbor and you see it and they don't, and you're both looking at the same place, and you get frustrated because you keep pointing and say, "Don't you see that? There's a flying disc up there," and they say, "See what?" It could happen like that.
Yeah, that's fascinating. We have another really great question from Kendra. She says, my father always said that he was from a reptilian place. It doesn't totally surprise me that we are to avoid them, but what does that mean about me as a hybrid? He insisted on this the entire time I was growing up.
Again, I think somebody who would say that they were reptilian, they might have this hybridization in them that wouldn't necessarily spill over into being biological. So, I mean, it's something, Kendra, I know you well, and we could discuss it, offline, and I could just do some testing just to see, if that rolled over into you, on a biological basis, or if it's strictly just energetic.
Cool.
Thank you, and thank you for the talk. That was wonderful.
I know. It's
Oh, you're
awesome.
welcome. It's always
Yes
fun.
to the light, and yes to love. Yes to love.